What is a woman? It's a question that a toddler could answer, but left-wing adults somehow managed to overcomplicate it to the point that it had to go all the way to Britain's Supreme Court, which has just ruled that women are adult human females, just like a toddler instinctively knows. Lots of fat ugly people with tattoos and nose piercings are now having toddler tantrums, and lots of actual women like J.K. Rowling are delighted. I'm looking forward to the Supreme Court's ruling over whether the Pope is a Catholic or not and where bears go to the toilet. The court ruled that for the purposes of the Equality Act, which covers discrimination in every area of British life, including employment, education, and public services, the terms woman and sex refer to a biological woman and biological sex. Lots of skinny-wristed men are now furious that women are allowed to legally exist, and these men are now on social media patiently explaining to women what a woman is and saying that trans rights are human rights. Yes, trans people still have human rights like the right to own property or freedom of religion, but there's no article in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that says that grown men are allowed to play on girls' sports teams or expose their scrotal sacks in the women's changing rooms. Anyway, there's a huge amount of bollocks being spoken about it, and I'd like to add to that pile. I know people will say, oh, but you're a straight white male, how can you comment on trans issues? Straight white male, what do you think trans women are? Also, yes, it does affect me. Before this ruling, I met every requirement to be a proud trans woman, which included saying I'm a woman and having she, her pronouns in my LinkedIn bio, and that's it. Now, because of this bigoted ruling, I can no longer walk into women's changing rooms or use women's bathrooms. I'm no longer allowed to punch women in the face in women's boxing matches, and I'm at serious risk of being kicked off my under-12s girls netball team. I am now excluded from women's spaces, so I've had to let my wife cook dinner. This is literal genocide. The Supreme Court case dates back to 2018 when the devolved Scottish Government put forward legislation requiring that half of the board members of public companies in Scotland are women. At first, the definition of woman included anyone who identified as female. When the advocacy group For Women Scotland objected, the government revised its guidance, stating that woman could also include trans women, so biological males, with a gender recognition certificate. For Women Scotland mounted a second challenge but was unsuccessful, and the case ultimately reached the UK Supreme Court. In between this, Marion Calder from For Women Scotland also found time to put on a gig with me in Edinburgh. Here's me and Darius with Marion and Ash Regan, a Scottish politician who split from the SNP over their trans ideology, because it was the SNP who pushed it to ridiculous levels, passing the Gender Reform Bill. Gender Reform Bill sounds like a Scottish guy called Bill who wears his kilt a bit short, but it's not. It's a piece of legislation designed to make it much easier for people to officially change their gender by self-identifying, instead of living as a woman for 2 years and having a medical diagnosis and convincing a panel of medical experts. Any bloke in Scotland could just recite the magic spell, I'm a woman, and they magically become a woman in the eyes of the law. It's like giving someone a pilot's license because they identify as being able to land a Boeing 747. What could possibly go wrong? Women protested that predatory males would use self-identification to gain access to women's spaces like changing rooms and female prisons. These women were dismissed as transphobic bigots. The very next day, a bloke called Adam Graham was being tried for double rape and decided during the court proceedings that he was actually a woman called Isla Bryson, despite being a big muscly bloke with facial tattoos like Mike Tyson and a big wanger that he raped with. Nevertheless, under Scottish gender ideology, he was now a she because he said so. So lawyers in court had to refer to her penis, and she was transferred to a Scottish women's prison. The dream of gender ideology met the hard reality of Isla Bryson's cock. Nicola Sturgeon had to backtrack over the uproar and move Isla to a male prison, which would suggest that she thinks that Isla is in fact a man. But under Sturgeon's gender reform bill, he's a woman. Sturgeon couldn't make it make sense.
My question is, are all trans women women? You haven't answered that question.
Well, that's not the point that we're dealing with here.
That's the question I'm asking.
Trans women are women, but in the prison context, there is no automatic right for a trans woman.
So there are contexts where a trans woman is not a woman?
No, there is circumstances in which a trans woman will be housed in the male prison estate.
Is there any context in which a woman born as a woman will be housed in the male estate?
Look, we're talking here about trans women.
And I'm now asking about women born as women.
I don't think there are circumstances there, but...
So it's different for trans women?
Well, yes, and I'm not...
So they're not equal?
That is not... There is a risk assessment process done for trans women that takes account of the nature of the crime. Clearly, significant concern arises out of sexual crime and whether it's appropriate for them to be in a female prison or a male prison.
Trans women are women, but in the prison context, they're not. Women don't stop being women when they commit crimes or get sent to prison. This makes no sense, but at least the ridiculousness brought down Sturgeon. Lesbian groups were also affected as they had to include males. 3 lesbian groups were part of the case taken to the Supreme Court. Under the gender rules they were challenging, it would have become illegal for women to form associations that excluded trans women, so males. So lesbian groups would be forced by law to include women like me. Lesbians have already spoken out about feeling pressure to sleep with trans women, and there are also concerns about gay erasure. You might be thinking, who'd have an issue with gay erasure? They're a great band, but this is something else. Young people who would grow up to be gay are being railroaded into transitioning. Young gay women are sometimes a bit butch, and young gay men are sometimes a bit zesty, and because these are traditionally the characteristics of the opposite sex, gender woo-woo cultists, also known as every school teacher in Britain, would jump on them and chuck them on the conveyor belt for transitioning. And hey, I know it's all done out of kindness and compassion, but maybe there are some negative consequences to pumping children full of drugs to block their puberty, putting them on hormones, and then cutting off their genitals. Maybe, I don't know, err on the side of not drugging and maiming children? The best research there is shows that puberty resolves feelings of gender dysphoria in most young people. We should especially be cautious now that transitioning has turned into a multi-billion-dollar industry, so there's an incentive for lobby groups to propagandize the benefits of transitioning, and it seems like a bit of a cult. I mean, look at Hollywood. All 3 of the Sex and the City women have got trans kids.
Most importantly, I am here today as the mother of a proud trans man. I am here today as the aunt of a proud trans man. My best friend's kid is trans, and my kid's best friend is trans.
I mean, that's statistically impossible. And Megan Fox has got 3 trans kids apparently. In fact, everyone in Hollywood is trans kids now. It's the new Tesla, or the new stain on your dress after visiting Harvey Weinstein's hotel room. And you know who the gender woo-woo cult has really ruined things for? African child soldiers. 30 years ago, a kid in Sierra Leone would be playing football with a coconut and a helicopter would land and out would jump Madonna, and she'd get the kid in a headlock and drag him onto the helicopter, kicking the mum in the chest, and the kid would be like, yes, a new life in Hollywood in a big mansion with a fridge. This is brilliant. Now the helicopter lands and Charlize Theron jumps out and gets a kid in a headlock and gets him onto the helicopter, and the kid thinks, brilliant, a new life in a Hollywood mansion with chocolate ice cream, and 6 weeks later the kid is on the cover of Italian Vogue with his hair in bunches and his gonads in a specimen jar, while Charlize explains how as soon as the kid got in the helicopter they could all tell that she was a girl, and Charlize gets called brave and gets to work in Hollywood, and self-ID allowed anyone to compete in women's sports. This isn't fair because going through male puberty gives you certain athletic advantages. You get stronger muscles, you get greater bone density, it's easier to parallel park outside the stadium. This is New Zealand Olympic weightlifter Laurel Hubbard. She competed as a male weightlifter and broke New Zealand records before transitioning at the age of 35. She doesn't just have the advantage of going through male puberty, she's been through male middle age. She's got what I guess we have to refer to as female pattern baldness, and she's supposed to be a woman. If you drew a moustache and a bowler hat on her, you'd have Oliver Hardy. I'm not sure where Laurel Hubbard had her gender reassignment surgery done, but apparently she's got a 131 kilogram snatch. That's got to be one of the bigger ones. The madness is everywhere. A toddler was kicked out of nursery a couple of weeks ago in Britain for transphobia. Presumably this bigoted 3-year-old said mama instead of cervix having birthing person. And lefties say a woman is anyone who identifies as one. Identifies as a what then? You can't have a circular definition. And lefties say that everyone should be able to be their authentic self. Well, what about transphobes then? Can't they be their authentic transphobic self? And lefties have this idea that people are assigned male or female at birth, like it's the doctor's decision to just pluck a gender out of the air on a whim. This would mean that parents could choose a boy by asking the doctor to assign their baby male, and they could then change their mind, they could take the baby back to the doctor and have it reassigned female. No, this is obviously nonsense. Biological sex isn't assigned, it's observed, it's a real thing, it's an immutable immutable fact. It's observable at the cellular level with chromosomes, and in the body, archaeologists can tell whether a skeleton is male or female from the bones they dig up, although academia is now so captured by gender communism that they're trying to claim that ancient historical figures like Joan of Arc were in fact non-binary or whatever else made up nonsense. Honestly, trans activists have ruined things for genuine trans people. Considering they're demanding accommodations from society, they aren't always very accommodating to women. Here's a trans activist screaming witch at a woman outside the Scottish Parliament. I'm assuming they go by the pronouns meat and loaf. It's funny how many transoids immediately revert to Phil Mitchell levels of male aggression in an argument. And listen, I think trans women exist, and this is where I piss everyone off on every side of the debate. There are three kinds of trans women. There's the confused autistic teenager who's succumbed to their relentless propaganda. There's the midlife crisis pervert who just wants to sniff around in women's bogs. And there are genuine trans women like Blair White who make an effort and look like a woman and just want to go about their business. They've been dragged through this nonsense by trans cultists who pushed it too far. Trans people existed before 2015 and no one really cared. Then fat male hentai porn vegan incel nerds started demanding people let them go in the girls' showers, and now here we are. This ruling will have a big impact. Most organisations had implemented the Equality Act in their HR policies on the basis of gender self-identification. The law is now clear and those policies can be clarified and reversed and based on reality. There are many people who've been fired or reprimanded for suggesting that women exist, and they have now been vindicated. Police forces across the UK have already been instructed that trans women cannot conduct intimate body searches of women. This is obviously a good idea. Who would want women to be forced to submit to a cavity search by the big banana-fingered bassist out of Manowar? The Good Law Project, a far-left activist group, said, "This ruling sets a dangerous precedent and erases trans women from protections. It puts trans rights back 20 years. But the Supreme Court judge actually reiterated that trans people are already and will continue to be protected from discrimination and harassment by the Equality Act, just not as women. So don't get your panties in a twist or they'll chafe your bollocks. And don't forget the sacrifices that people made along the way. Graham Linehan lost a whole career. J.K. Rowling and Marion Calder had their names dragged through the mud. Everyone who's spoken out of this could have kept their head down and bleated empty, meaningless platitudes like all the lazy, fake, woke fannies still are. I was cancelled from my run at the Perth Fringe in Australia over accusations of transphobia just because I was being transphobic. This is genuinely the person who complained. These people will never not be hilarious. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please commit a hate crime by sharing it with your mates. And if you'd like to support me making these videos, you can become a Patreon or chuck me money for a beer. There's a link below, and you can join a community of the only sane people left in the West and get exclusive content and stuff like that. Okay, thanks for listening. I've been Leo Kears. Bye. Bye bye.